Judge Byerly's courtroom, which is provided for overflow seating, and it is being live streamed down in his courtroom so that you can follow along. This morning, I met with the attorneys prior to coming out because we needed to address a story that has received a lot of press yesterday and this morning, and those are the statements that were made by attorney Shannon Smith. Mr. Nassar has been very clear and issued a statement. He did not know that Ms. Smith was going to make those statements. He did not authorize those statements to be made on his behalf, and he has disavowed those statements. It is unfortunate that those statements were made during the course of the sentencing procedure. They are not relevant to the sentencing procedure, nor is the opinion of Ms. Smith, since her statements were not made on behalf of Mr. Nassar. What is relevant to these proceedings is for the court to hear each individual story and how the criminal actions of the defendant impacted each person's life. I believe what each individual has and will tell me, and it is their individual stories that are relevant to the proceedings. Ms. Povolitis, will you please have the first individual come forward?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Judge, what are appearances?
Go ahead, Mr. Newberg.
Matt Newberg on behalf of Larry Nasser, seated or to my right is Molly White.
Angela Povolitis on behalf of the people. With me at council table is Robin Liddell and Christopher Allen from the Michigan Department of Attorney General and Detective Lieutenant Andrea Munford of the Michigan State University Police Department. Robin, it's not working. No, it is. Okay. Your Honor, the next survivor you will hear from is Ms. Valerie Webb. She did speak in Ingham County, but she has requested to say a few words here as well.
Absolutely.
And for the record, her photograph at the age of abuse is on this screen. And she's accompanied at the podium with and by her boyfriend.
Good morning. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to share my story and use my voice today, Your Honor. As I typed this, I was at a loss for words because my body was enraged with anger and anxiety, but that is not an uncommon feeling for me this past month. My anxiety is very high, my nights are restless, and I am often angry. Although I am not sure if I am angry with myself or for not recognizing what the defendant was doing to me sooner, or angry with him for doing all the horrible abuse he did to me and my fellow sister survivors. I have recently had to seek out counseling because I find myself feeling hopeless, but I know that we have made an army and we will not give up until we put a stop to this. No one, and especially no little girl, should have to experience this, should have to put a pause on their college education to come into court and talk about how they were abused. I was 4 years old when I started gymnastics and 7 years old when I first began at Twist Stars. I first saw the defendant for mild injuries like knees and ankles. Seeing Larry was part of the club. As I progressed in levels, the pains got worse and I hurt my back to the point where gymnastics became unbearable. I was 12 and by this time I was seeing Larry at the MSU clinic. I was asked to change into baggy shorts. I figured it was just so he could examine me better. I never questioned him. In my mind, he was the best doctor. He treated Olympians, so why would I think differently? As I lie there on the table, exposed, his ungloved hands moved up to a spot that had never been penetrated before. He often pressed so hard that it hurt me. but I was assured that this would help my back. When he released and asked if it felt better, I said no, so he pushed harder and further in while simultaneously pressing on my back. My mom would often be in the room with me. It just meant Larry convincing her less surgery for my back and that it will get me back to gymnastics. I now have had 7 back surgeries, so some treatment that was. But why would a doctor of all people not give me the best treatment, the one I looked up to? You made me think that you were helping me, when all along you were helping yourself. We, as sister survivors, have now built a force that no one should have messed with in the first place. We will stand tall and strong until we make sure all the evil is taken out of this sport and it is back to the thing we loved so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. Very difficult to take time out of school and to be here today. I thank you, sir, for being here with her. And I agree with everything that you've said. Thank you very much.
Your Honor, the next survivor, I am told, I believe, came quite a ways to be here. That's accurate, right? I know we had some email communication last week. She came from Europe to be here. Okay, it's another tricky last name. Your Honor, this is Melissa Vigogne. One more time. Vigogne. Vigogne. I don't even say it right because I'm not French. You can say it better than I can.
And who is with you today?
This is my husband, Jerome Vigogne. And I do have a PowerPoint for the media with her proper spelling. She is our number 31 on the list in victim 202, and she has asked to be publicly identified. So I'm very glad that she and her husband are here. Thank you. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready, Melissa.
Thank you. Your Honor, first of all, thank you for letting all of us speak here today. We're finally being heard. Little by little, change is coming. Empty words are being replaced with actions. Each voice in each story is making a difference. Living abroad has added an additional layer to this traumatic experience for me. I have felt alone, isolated, and disconnected. It's made the healing harder, the pain harder to confront, and thus more elusive to overcome. It is for this reason that I knew that I needed to be here in this courtroom today. I wanted to be able to look Larry in the eyes, and I wanted him to be able to see and hear from me. His power over me stops now. Gymnastics, as is the case for so many others, was my life. I was a gymnast for 16 years, then a coach, and then a judge. I first met Larry here in Lansing in 1999. I had had a car accident earlier that year that ended my gymnastics season right before regional championships. I was devastated. Unlike previous injuries, this injury prevented me from even stepping foot in the gym. I needed a miracle. One of my coaches came back from the training camp at the ranch and told me that Larry mentioned that he could help and he would be willing to see me. We booked a flight from Orlando to Lansing for 3 days of appointments. While he treated me, he asked me to remove all my clothes, which seems unnecessary, if not inappropriate, but Larry was going to fix me. He was a miracle worker. And during those 12 hours or so of appointments, often late into the night, he gained my trust. 3 years later, I was rear-ended again on the way to the gym. This one was worse. After a few weeks, we figured the best thing to do would be to call Larry. The 2002 U.S. Championships were coming up, and he stressed that I couldn't wait until he returned here to Michigan. He asked me to join him in Cleveland, where he would treat me while he wasn't seeing other athletes. So there I spent about 4 days, hour upon hour, behind a closed door in the large athletic training room. There were doctors and interns from Cleveland Clinic all around, nearly falling over themselves every time they were near Larry. Everyone practically worshipped him, further reinforcing how lucky I felt to be there and getting so much of his time. After the planned first 3 days of supposed treatment, Larry told me that my back pain was coming from my hips and that he needed at least one more day to really finish the work. My mom, who had been there with me in the room up until that point, had to go back to work, so she could not stay. He insisted that we find a way, so we did. My coaches were there with another gymnast, so I wouldn't be totally alone. At the event, that is. The next day, Larry's treatment style changed. He was working on my hips and hamstrings, and suddenly I noticed that his fingers were inside of me. I thought to myself, that can't be. He didn't even ask. He didn't say anything. He didn't even wash his hands, and much less put on gloves. I remember being so confused, but this was Larry, the best sports doctor in the world, and he was going to fix me. Over the hours that followed, sometimes momentarily interrupted, as another athlete came in with an injury, he continued to abuse me. He made me believe that what he was doing to me was normal and accepted. He would say things like, I have to get really deep into the tissue, and this is the only way I can get there. Girls can tell the difference between sexual and therapeutic touch. And I do this a lot. Everyone trusts me. I remember thinking of a few girls from the 1996 and 2000 Olympic team and thinking, well, if he does that to them, it must be okay because USAG would not have him as their doctor if it wasn't. When he finally stopped abusing me, I put my clothes back on and I came out to the main area. There he had his medical notes waiting for me to take back home, which were strangely missing this intravaginal treatment that he claimed was so imperative to my healing, and that he had spent hours performing. He also had a textbook in his hands, a textbook that described this type of treatment. Remember, he was not in his office. He had brought this textbook to Ohio because it was premeditated. He offered to let me read it so that I would be reassured that what he had been doing was an accepted medical treatment, but I declined. Due to the fact that I had to travel across the country to see him, this was the last time that I saw him. I left that appointment believing that Larry had done everything he possibly could to fix me. Although a few weeks later, however, despite the intensive treatment I had received, my pain had reached such levels that I could no longer function. I had to take Vicodin every day, multiple times a day, just to get through. I progressively became chronically ill and spent the next 12 years disabled and sometimes suicidal. One of my illnesses, fibromyalgia, is known to be triggered by sexual abuse. Could Larry's treatment be at least part of why I lost everything? Could the session of molestation be what caused my symptoms to become completely unmanageable within days of returning from Cleveland? I can't say, and I'll never know. Regardless, I fought for over a decade to recover and to get some semblance of life back. I lost my career, I lost my passion, I nearly lost my home. I became a professional patient, seeing doctors hundreds of times a year just to survive. Although with all that medical treatment, no other doctor, not an osteopath, a massage therapist, an acupuncturist, or a chiropractor, found it necessary for me to be completely nude, nor to put their hands inside my vagina. In 2013, I serendipitously discovered that my health is much better in France. So I left everything behind and moved abroad. I restarted my life. It was truly my renaissance. When the first allegations came out, I couldn't believe that Larry could possibly be what he was being accused of. Or accused of being. Especially because it also meant coming to terms with what he had done to me in the process. It meant identifying myself as a victim of sexual abuse. This is someone I felt like I knew. We had stayed in touch over the years, watched his kids grow up via photos and stories. Instagram frequently reminds me that no one has liked as many of my photos as Larry has. Lovely. It took me months of hearing voice after voice describe exactly what Larry had done to me. Seemingly play by play, to put the pieces together and finally confront the gnawing voice that had haunted me since that treatment table 15 years ago. Something just wasn't right. He hadn't treated me at all. He didn't try to fix me. There was no sound medical explanation to be found. He had abused me. As I came to terms with this reality, PTSD and anxiety flooded my world. After losing nearly everything due to injury and illness and completely starting over, I found myself again fighting to function, back in the trenches, crying myself to sleep, unable to close my eyes because that's where the flashbacks would come. Simply lying down provokes immediate flashbacks, and for it is at night, in the darkness, that the monsters come out to play. I relive that treatment on nearly a daily basis. So while it may have only happened once, I have experienced it hundreds of times. When my husband touches me, even just on the arm, I often jump and burst into tears. Intimacy is nearly impossible. I wish I'd come out unscathed from my encounters with Larry, and that I weren't part of this army of survivors. Yet it is an army that I am so proud of and so inspired by each and every day. One that gives me hope, one that has helped me go from feeling powerless to powerful, one that is helping me find purpose, a voice, and a battle cry, and one that helped me be here today. While I still may be in the trenches, I was raised a gymnast. Gymnasts don't give up. I'll fiercely battle until Larry and those that enable him cast no more darkness on the second chance of life that I've fought so hard to have. I'll fiercely battle until real change comes. It should not have taken 20 years to stop this man. It should not have taken 37,000 images for anyone to begin to believe the reports of abuse. It should not have taken 5 weeks until authorities were contacted. It should not have taken all of this time for board members and presidents to resign. It should not have taken over 150 voices for the world to listen. We must not leave these courtrooms unchanged. We must not stop here. We must not stop till all parties are held responsible. We must not find ourselves here again. Your Honor, may I address the defendant? The very things that you exploited, Larry, our tenacity, our resilience, our sheer grit and determination to push through pain, are the very things that have literally enchained you. You may have found the perfect storm in which you could flourish, but the winds have changed, and you now stand square in the path of your own destruction. I flew across an ocean just to be able to be here, to stand and look you in the eye. I needed to see you for who you really are, not the kind man I thought I knew, not the healer I thought I could trust, but the monster that I now confront daily. I needed to use my voice. I needed to take back the power. I do hope, however, sincerely, that you too see yourself for who you really are. That you stop trying to convince yourself that you're the good guy. And that you can see what you have really done. Come to terms with what has happened in our lives as a result. Then and only then will you be able to seek forgiveness and embark on your own necessary journey of repair. I do hope that, through the grace of God, the evil in you will be snuffed out, the delusions will be squelched, and that there will be some sort of beauty that can be fashioned from the ashes that remain. There is no magical force that can right these wrongs. Time does not automatically heal. Evil does not recede on its own. It must be overcome. It must be forced to retreat. We all have an obligation to be part of that force that will bring forth change, both here in this courtroom, both out there in the world where there is still much work to be done. this did not occur in a vacuum. And while his sentencing does not and cannot right his countless wrongs, it does not and cannot erase the scars that we carry. It does, however, send a message that must not be underestimated. I ask that you hand down the maximum sentence possible, not because we must assure that he will never walk free again, as that is already assured, thankfully, but because it says that every survivor is important. Every count matters. That those who inflict wounds and leave scars on the most vulnerable don't get to get away with it. Justice, albeit incomplete, must be served. Finally, Your Honor, as I reflect back on all the lies, the deception, the grooming, as I prepare, while I search the internet for the best strollers and car seats, I also search the internet for resources to teach a toddler, because I imagine that's about as early as we can start, how to not just know to own their body, how to not just know to say no, but also how to watch out for signs of grooming, how to know that often the most dangerous people in our lives are the ones that we trust, the ones that we know. I've also discovered that there is one thing that Larry got right. We do know the difference between sexual and therapeutic touch. For some, they knew immediately and they were shamefully ignored and silenced. For others, it took years to strip away the grooming and see it for what it was. But here we are, en masse, telling the world that his treatments were not therapeutic. His touch was not medical. And that you, Larry, are a sexual predator, and that your time is up. Our time is now. Did I mention that we're tenacious? Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, Melissa, thank you for being here, and to your husband for accompanying you. I think you certainly have come the longest physical distance on your journey. I agree with you that sentencing, no matter what it is not going to be able to address all of the wrongs and all of the hurts that have occurred. Hopefully the ability to give impact statements will be helpful on the healing process. I agree with you. I think that each voice and each story do make a difference, and they will certainly be considered in terms of deciding what the sentence will be. Thank you for having the bravery to come here, and I hope that your journey, both physically and emotionally here today, is helpful to you. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the next survivors you will hear from are two sisters, and actually their third sister spoke at the Ingham County sentencing. And I want to confirm, everyone is comfortable with being publicly identified? Is that accurate? Okay. I have with me here Lauren Margraves and Madison Margraves, and their mother and father, and I'll let them introduce themselves as well for the record.
Randall Margraves.
Sherry Margraves. I have photographs, Your Honor, of both sisters. Your Honor, the first speaker will be Lauren Margraves, and I have, for the record, her photograph displayed on the screen.
So, I just want to thank you for letting us speak. This last year and a half of my life has been a crazy whirlwind, and there's no reason it should have been that way. When all the news broke over the scandal that a girl who had Larry Nasser as her doctor reported sexual misconduct, my mind immediately thought about the time when I was 13, just a kid, laying on a table at MSU, and you put your ungloved hands all over my rear and slipped your thumb into the most private area of my body. I saw you for multiple injuries, minor ones, but when I had a pretty bad injury when I was 13, I pulled my hamstring and I broke the bone it was attached to up in my pelvis. And unfortunately, you were my doctor. The whole time since then, I had thought, I guess it's just an accident, since that's where my injury was. But you never apologized for doing it. You never even said anything or even told me you were going to put your hands so far up my shorts. And I know now that was no accident. But when the number of girls reporting their horrible experiences kept rising, and this whole story got bigger and bigger, all I can think is how surreal this has all been. I can't believe a grown man would do these horrible things to so many little girls and young women. And when I saw the names of the people on the list that was released, I wanted to cry. Those girls are my friends, and they are literally my sisters, and that I competed with at Twist Stars. And I had great friendships with all of them. And I trusted you. My parents trusted you. My two sisters, who also had unfortunate experiences with you, trusted you. And now I feel like I'll never be able to trust another man ever again, whether it be a romantic partner or another doctor I'm forced to see. My two sisters and I have had such a hard time just trying to talk to each other about this since we all had bad experiences with you. Just trying to focus on my studies this last couple months. I'm a full-time student at CMU. It's been nearly impossible. This is all I can think about, and my stress and anxiety has skyrocketed. And most of my classes, we have to talk about, what's on the news, what's going on, and everybody keeps talking about the Nasser case, and they don't know that I'm part of that, and so it's difficult. My parents are heartbroken and so filled with regret. All three of their children were victims of you, and they wish so badly they could have taken us somewhere else to get care. And when more headlines are published every day and more front page newspapers and your faces everywhere, I see the look in their faces, and I know they want to be able to do something, but they can't. And the guilt they have will never go away. And all this is because of you. Nothing can ever be done to undo what you did to my sisters and me and my friends. But you thought that since you were a doctor, that you would never have to pay the price, and that you could just do the things you did because of your position. But how wrong you were. You have underestimated how powerful and strong all of us are. And I'm so glad you will never walk this earth as a free man ever again, because honestly, you are a poison to this earth. I just want you to know that you are nothing to me, or anyone on this planet for a matter of fact. And I will not let your unforgivable acts define me or affect my success in life. I am better than you, and every young woman who has stood up against you is better than you. And to everyone who helped get you behind bars, Judge Cunningham and Judge Aquilina, I thank you. To my parents, and to all the people who have supported my sisters and I through this, I thank you. To all the women who stood up to you, and to the women around the world who have stood up to others like you, I thank you. To all the parents of the victims, and to the world who is supporting us survivors, I want to thank you. But to you, Larry Nasser, I just hope you live a long, slow life in prison. Time's up.
The next speaker will be Lauren's sister, Madison.
Okay. I first would like to thank you for giving us all the opportunity to let our voices be heard during this difficult time. But really, it's been more than just a difficult time. I really feel that my entire family has gone through hell and back these last few months because of what Larry Nasser did to both of my sisters and I years ago. I have known Larry Nasser for most of my life. He once was someone I had always trusted. I first met him when I was a young gymnast that competed for Twist Stars. I remember being a kid playing outside of his training room while he treated one of my sisters for an injury. I remember that when I broke my arm later on in my life that he was my doctor. I remember going through a very painful back injury in the spring of 2014 during a high school softball season. I remember how excited I was to hear that Nasser would be treating me, not only because he was someone that I was familiar with, but also because by this time I now knew that he was known as the best of the best. I truly couldn't believe that I would be in the presence of an Olympic trainer. I began to see him for my back quite regularly between 2014 and 2016. At that time, he had my full trust. During all of my many visits in Nasser's office at MSU Sports Med, one of my parents was always in the room. So even when things seemed to make me uncomfortable, I never thought anything of it. As many women here may know, having a male doctor for anything can sometimes be awkward no matter what. He was a world-renowned doctor after all, so how could he ever do anything wrong? Besides, I was just a high schooler. I didn't know anything about proper medical practices. These are the things that I was thinking during the time that I was being treated by Nasser. Like many other survivors, I was assaulted by Larry Nasser and didn't even know it. Looking back now, I've realized all the signs that I missed which might haunt me forever. I remember one of the appointments where he assaulted me that I was asked to change into a pair of baggy shorts which he had provided. Before leaving the room so that I could change, I remember he made a comment to my mother and I about how one time he had a young patient who was so comfortable around him that she would just undress herself in front of him without hesitation. He said it in his typical Larry Nasser way, while laughing and joking and faking being the likable, trusted person that he presented himself to be. I remembered thinking to myself right then how absolutely bizarre it was that he had just said what he said. Later at that appointment, I was told, "I'm going to be reaching in a comfortable area." Then, without gloves, Nasser accidentally touched me in a place where no man has any business being without permission. Fast forward towards the end of his career at MSU Sports Med, about 2 years after my first appointment with him, my back was still not better. After feeling like we had tried all that we could try, Nasser finally revealed that there was one more thing left to do. He proceeded to grab a piece of paper which showed a rough sketch of an outline of a person. He suggested acupuncture. I told my mother that this is a treatment that sometimes has great success, so of course we were hopeful. He said that with the way that acupuncture works, wherever the area of pain was, the needles had to go on the opposite side of the body. He said that this meant because I had back pain, he would need to put the needles on my vagina. With no coverage, no gloves, underwear and pants down to my thighs, my entire vagina was completely exposed to him. As uncomfortable as this was back then, I never thought that he was doing something wrong. Now, finding out all this time after that he was in fact not performing that practice correctly or appropriately, I constantly find myself becoming nauseous any time I have to relive that day. If you were to tell me when this case was first unfolding that I would be a part of the roughly 200 young women that were affected by Nasser's disgusting, monstrous, and abusive actions, I would have not believed you. At the time, I just could not wrap my head around everything that he had done because he was my doctor, and I had trusted him so much. However, even though it took me so long to finally come to terms with the reality of what happened to all of us survivors, here I am. I would like to take this time to thank all the strong and courageous young women who shared their stories before me. Without you, and without seeing that other people were going through what I had been going through, I would have never found the strength to speak today. You show me that I am not alone. You show me that there is power in a voice. And I will forever be grateful for that. To my parents, thank you for all your love and support through all of this. You have done everything that a parent could ever do. I love you. To Larry Nasser, I want you to know that you no longer hold power over me or my thoughts. Thank you, Judge Cunningham, for allowing me to share my story today.
Well, Lauren and Madison, thank you for having the courage to be here today. Hopefully, when this process is completed and the sentencing occurs, a lot of the media attention in terms of what you described of constantly seeing the defendant's face on TV, hopefully that will alleviate some of the anxiety that you have both been feeling and allow you, Lauren, to get back to school. I can't imagine for both of you and your families and everyone, it's very difficult to concentrate, think about anything else, but you have each other, you have your sister. Mr. and Mrs. Margraves, thank you for being here today. Thank you for letting us hear your voice.
Judge, would a distraught father have a chance to say something?
Go ahead, sir. If,
You son of a...
no, we don't want to swear. We don't want to have profanity. I can't imagine the anger and the anxiety and the feeling of wanting retribution. And if you need to say something to help you, I'm more than willing to let you say something. But in a courtroom, we don't use profanity. But if you have some words that you would like to say, I would like to give you the opportunity to say
I
them.
would ask you to, as part of this sentencing, to grant me 5 minutes in the locked room of this demon.
I have
Would
a
you
feeling.
do that?
That is not how
Yes or
our.
no?
No, sir, I can't.
Would you
do
give me
that.
1 minute?
You know that I can't do that. That's not how our legal system
Well, I'm
works.
I want that son of a bitch! Give me 1 minute with that bastard. One minute.
Relax, sir.
Relax.
Take it easy, buddy.
Just relax. Okay, now we're gonna kind of let up, okay? You have to let up too, okay? All right. Sit up, get on your side. Sit up.
Where is he? 1, 2, 3, up. What if this happened to you guys? You haven't lived through it, lady.
You cannot behave like this. This is letting him have this power over us, okay? She will come out and tell you this. I don't want to see another parent get arrested or put handcuffs on or a victim. We cannot behave like this. I understand Mr. Margrave's frustration, but you cannot do this. This is not helping your children. This is not helping your community. This is not helping us. This is not helping the police department. Use your words, use your experiences to get him and to change. Do not use physical violence. All rise for this backup session.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, we are back on the record in People versus Nassar file 17217FC. Obviously, what just occurred in the courtroom was scary and just caused a lot of level of discomfort. And for all of you that are in the galley, I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry that you had to experience it. I know myself, my heart started beating fast and my legs felt shaky because of that quick eruption of violence. This is such a unique case that involves hundreds of victims and therefore hundreds of family members, brothers, sisters, spouses, friends, and to have watched the pain and the suffering of what loved ones have gone through is imaginable. And I recognize that Mr. Margraves had 3 daughters that he has had to watch go through the pain and the hurt. We heard 2 of his daughters speak today. I understand his other daughter spoke in Ingham County. And so if it is hard and difficult for me to hear what his daughters have to say. I can't imagine what it is like for a parent. And no one is making any excuses for what the defendant did in this case. However, these are legal proceedings, and the criminal justice system is doing what it is supposed to do. We are going to listen, I am going to listen to all of the impact statements. I'm going to apply the law, and Mr. Nassar will be sentenced. That's our legal system. He has already been sentenced, as you all know, in federal court. That sentence will consume the rest of his natural life. He has been sentenced in Ingham County. The same thing. That is how our system works. We cannot react by using physical violence and assault against someone who is and has performed criminal acts. That's not how our system works. What Mr. Nassar did is horrible. It's unthinkable. But please let the criminal justice system do what it is supposed to do and issue the punishment that he should get. I know it is hard, but I need to ask all of you to try and not react in any physical way. It is not appropriate. It does not send the right message. It actually just causes more pain and more discomfort, and certainly we have enough of that already in this courtroom as a result of the defendant's actions. Now, normally, we were going to take a break at 10:30, but because of what occurred, I just want you to know, for purposes of planning, I'd like to go straight through until approximately noon or whatever the natural breaking point would be. Ms. Povolitis, is that okay with you?
I think that would be fine. You may need a restroom break, but I'll let you know.
Mr. Newberg?
That's fine, Judge.
All right. So if we all can just take a deep breath, and let's get back to the business of why we are here. May I please have the individual to give me the next impact statement?
Your Honor, it is my understanding the next speaker is going to be publicly identified. Is that correct?
Pardon me?
She is going to be publicly
Okay.
identified. I have two photographs, actually, two slides that she's asked us to display. The first I put on the screen. This is Taylor. Is it Helber? Yeah, Helber. Okay. And her coach is here. Can you tell us your name?
Claudia Kretschmer,
Can you spell it, please?
Kretschmer.
And the next slide.
Okay,
Okay.
cool, thank you.
Thank you. As I sat in the back of this courtroom preparing myself to speak, I couldn't help but compare the feeling to the feeling I would get right before a beam routine at a gymnastics meet. The nervous energy, the slight fear, the intense focus, the excitement. I remember I was always so excited to compete beam. It was the one thing I knew how to do right. But every time, I'd be a little fearful. I didn't want to fall. I didn't want to have to get back up. But every time, I'd either stick my routine and be happy, or I'd fall, get back up, finish the meet, move on to the next meet, using it as a learning experience to get better. This is all just another beam routine. This time I've fallen, I have to get back up, and I have to move on in order to be better in the future. I want to start out by saying thank you. Thank you to my parents, my brothers, and my close friends. All of you have been incredibly supportive during this time. Thank you to this courtroom for allowing us all to come and share our words. Without this opportunity, I'm not sure I would have ever felt closure. And thank you to all of the survivors who have shared their story. Your stories have inspired me to share my own, and I hope that my story will inspire someone to share theirs someday. Larry. Ever since I was young, I remember having this innate self-confidence. I was so sure of myself. My mom would help me up the stairs. I'd walk back down and do it myself. This translated really well into the sport of gymnastics, which is a sport that requires a lot of self-confidence. But gymnastics is also a sport of perfection. Nothing is ever good enough. A week off meant a week not spent bettering yourself. This is why so many of us went to Larry.
If you were injured, you would do anything to get back to gymnastics. In 2007, when I was 12, I suffered 2 stress fractures in my spine, and I was completely desperate. Go to Larry, everyone said. He's the best. He'll help you recover faster than any other doctor. We're so lucky he has an office so close by. That's what we all thought, and that's what I still thought as the case began to come out before my world began unraveling. I remember the first day my mom told me of the accusations. We would joke about it. Thank God he didn't hurt me. Thank God you were in the room with me every time he'd do the procedure. Wow, I'm so lucky to have been spared. I even remember telling my close friends, yeah, he would do this weird procedure where he would press down there and massage your back at the same time, but it wasn't abuse. This was when I was floating in open water. Then the case was further investigated and more young women came forward. I remember talking to my mom more as the case began to unravel. Remember all those weird things he would do? Why didn't he use gloves? Remember how he would make me change into the loose-fitting shorts he kept in his office if I showed up in spandex? Remember how I would squirm in discomfort when he did the procedure? Still, I was in denial. I continued to watch the victim statements. I knew her. I competed with her. This is real. This is my life. They're telling my same story. This was when the riptide came. It felt like I was drowning and I couldn't save myself. How didn't I see this sooner? Why didn't I realize that this was sexual abuse? How didn't my family and I know at the time? How did he do this to me visit after visit after visit with my mom, my dad, my coach in the room with me? Was my back even fractured? The 2 doctors prior to Larry told me it wasn't. Larry, you've turned my entire universe upside down. Everything I thought I knew about my past and about myself has been altered in some way. You've caused me to call everything into question. You had the incredible power to abuse without the patient ever knowing. You made me feel comfortable, like what you were doing was normal. I never thought to tell someone it made me uncomfortable. It was an inherently sexual procedure. What would it mean if I said I didn't like it? Would it make me different? Would it make me seem weird? My mom didn't question it. Why would I? Today I question how this omission affects me today. Did my anxiety develop because a part of me always knew what was happening? Did I develop my deep need to feel in control of every situation because in those moments I felt completely powerless? You've caused me to question what defines sexual abuse. Whenever we think of sexual abuse, we automatically think of rape. We think of 2 people old enough to engage in sex with one of the parties not giving consent. What this has all taught me is that we have to redefine the way we stereotypically think of sexual abuse. Sexual abuse can happen to a 12-year-old, and it can happen without her knowing. Even still, even when I remind myself of this, I question. Maybe it really was a medical procedure. Maybe I was the one patient who was spared. Does the fact that I didn't know it was abuse when I was 12 make it not count as sexual abuse? Should I have just never came forward about this? Am I being dramatic? Am I making this a big deal when it shouldn't be? The fact that I now have to live with this dichotomy makes me constantly angry and confused. The whole thing makes me feel dirty, like I want to crawl out of my body and live in someone else's. This will and has made hundreds of girls question how, why, and if this happened to them. You've made them question, was I abused? Does mine count? This whole experience has made me realize that everyone's counts and everyone's voice deserves to be heard. I now understand the entire notion behind victim blaming, because even on my best days I question myself and I think that maybe I deserved it for whatever reason. I make excuses for you to this day, Larry, and that is something that I try hard to and will eventually shake. My heart goes out to the many victims of sexual assault who aren't believed. Everyone's counts and everyone's voice deserves to be heard. For those who are hesitant to speak up, or for those who feel that they need a community to talk to during this time, I've created an online forum for an open dialogue. This was created to spark an open conversation for those affected by Larry, but it's not limited to this instance, and I encourage anyone to join. I shared my story on the forum, and I've received an overwhelming amount of support, which you can see here. I don't know if you can read it, but this is the amount of people who have reached out expressing support, and I can't thank everyone enough for holding me up during this difficult time. It's my hope that I can inspire someone else to come out publicly about his or her struggle with sexual assault. The amount of messages I've received saying, I admire how public you could be with your struggle. I was raped and I haven't told anyone, is shocking. It's a cultural issue that we must address. We shouldn't be silenced by fear or shame. Everyone's voice deserves to be heard, and everyone deserves to be supported, which is why I can't thank this courtroom enough for allowing us to come speak, because I think it's addressing the issue in a correct way. Larry, I hate what you've done. I hate that you touched me for your own pleasure. I hate that you touched me for your own pleasure with my mom in the room, unbeknownst to her. I hate that you've caused my parents pain. They question how they didn't see it when it was right in front of their faces. I hate that you took advantage of me and have now made my brothers question the safety of their older sister as they even try to wrap their minds around what happened. I hate that you manipulated an entire community of people. I hate that this will forever be something that I have to think about. But most of all, I hate that you've temporarily shattered my self-confidence and my self-assuredness. You fostered a mind rampant with self-doubt, self-blame, and false self-hatred. Larry, your 175-year sentence pales in comparison to the lives you've affected. But understand that we, your victims, will move on, live normal lives, be strong, and make sure that pedophiles like you do not escape their judgment day, that they stand trial for the crimes they committed and pay the price. May God have mercy on you. Thank you.
Taylor, that coach, thank you for being here with her, for being your support person. Thank you for having the courage to be here. I do hope that being here and making the statement today does provide you closure, but I agree with you. That doesn't mean the issue is closed. It's just being open, and I think it's just tremendous that you've created an online forum for a dialogue about not just this case, but all of incidences of rape and sexual assault. Thank you. While we're at a pause, to my friends over in the media, I forgot to ask you, when you do any shots of defendant's table, will you please make sure you do not zoom in on any of the paperwork? There's lists there that do contain information about some of the individuals that don't want their identity revealed, don't want people to know who they are. So they do have some paper sitting there. Just be cognizant of that if you would, please. Thank you.
Peter, can you see this board that I have here?
I can.
Could I put it maybe? I don't want to block the other.
There. Yes, now I can see it.
Your Honor, the next survivor's voice that we'll hear from is going to come through her parents. Megan Simon is no longer with us, and her parents, Jerry and LaVonda Simon, are here to speak and give her statement today. I have her photograph on the screen, and they've also brought in a number of photographs of her competing in gymnastics.
And you are Jerry?
Yes, I am.
Good morning. And you are LaVonda?
LaVonda. Good morning, Your Honor.
Thank you for being here.
And one of the coaches is here as well, and one of the family friend, daughter's friends is also a support person for this assignment.
Thank you very much for being here. Whenever you feel comfortable, go ahead and start, okay?
Okay. I am here today to be a voice for my daughter. Unfortunately, she cannot be here today because she passed away in April of 2012 at the young age of 23. When Megs was 12 years old, prior to a meet in Las Vegas, the infamous Dr. Nasser treated her for a severe hamstring. Her dad and I were in the exam room with her as Larry explained the procedure and told us it would be very painful. As he proceeded to examine her with an ungloved hand, she grimaced but remained silent and endured the pain. Following the exam, he wrapped her thigh and hip. She never spoke of the treatment. Between Las Vegas and Nationals in 2004, Larry continued his violation of our daughter. Prior to Nationals in 2004, she was treated again by Larry for 2 severely torn hamstrings. Her dad was in attendance for this next desecration of her body. She was again covered and violated with an ungloved hand. Again, Megan looked very tense, awkward, and anxious for the exam to be over. On 2 occasions, she jerked in shock as he penetrated her on the table and quickly looked at her dad. Her dad asked her, "Are you all right?" And she quickly turned her head and looked out the window, silent. Upon returning to the car, she told her dad that she would never go back to that doctor ever again. Her dad asked her why, and she said, "I don't want to talk about it." Eventually, her doctors had to tell her, is that the right spot?
I don't think so.
Just a second. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, here we go. Sorry. A little bit nervous. Shortly after Nationals, coming home from school, Megan, through no fault of her own, was involved in a near-fatal accident. Her accident left her in a coma with traumatic brain injuries. She had 13 bleeds in her brain, collapsed lungs, broken collarbone, and other multiple injuries. She never knew that Nationals would be her last competition. She had to learn everything she had done. She never knew that Nationals would be her last competition and had to learn everything that she had done. 16 years. Megan, as usual, remained strong and resolute. Through years of pain and rehab, the beautiful smile never leaving her face as she again endured the pain inside of herself. Eventually, her doctors had to tell her she could never do gymnastics again because she could not risk another brain injury. After learning this, she told her dad about her disgusting and ongoing violations that were being done by your hands, Larry, you. By the hands of you. You're a pedophile inmate, Dr. Nasser, that she loved and trusted at one point in her life. But she swore her dad to secrecy. "Please don't tell Mom." And he kept her secret until after her death. Megan knew the pain would be too intense for him to tell me, and it wasn't her nature to hurt her parents any more than what had already been endured. The memories, the tears, sleepless nights, and broken hearts all over again. They say God never gives you more than you can endure, and we are a prime example of that for sure. Now I stand before you, a convicted pedophile, and you know it. And I often wonder how your wife and your 3 kids can survive what you've done to their lives, as well as all of these beautiful women whose lives have forever been adversely affected by you. To me and others, you are a disgusting, brutal, inhumane beast that has inflicted pain on those we love the most. I think you'll remember, Larry, that when Megan was in the hospital, you brought her a poster from the 2004 Women's Olympic team. And you had all of them sign well wishes to her, and she did appreciate that. I'm sure when Megan got to heaven, she and God had a long discussion about you, and he will deal with you accordingly. You, Larry, are a piss-poor excuse of a man. While you pray to your rosary, I hope you are praying for the young women whose life that you have forever changed. Love you, Megan. Miss you, baby.
I can see how hard it was for you to come forward today, and I really appreciate you sharing your story with me. I really do. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'd like to introduce the next survivor who will be speaking today. This is Mariah Mclean, and is this spelled correctly? M-A-R-I-A-H, M-C, capital C-L-A-I-N.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Your Honor, for allowing us to speak today. And thank you for all of the survivors who have come forward and have been brave enough to share your story. I was watching Oprah Winfrey's Golden Gold speech on Time's Up and felt something in me move. Sure, I've heard Me Too and Time's Up used as hashtags to help publicize the necessary movement of women ready to stand up against their abusers. But this time I was moved in a different way. Almost like Oprah herself was addressing my issue. I started to think of the chiropractor I have recently begun to go to and remembering nearly jumping off the table when the doctor touched my back. Are my hands cold? He asked, confused. Yeah, sorry, I lied. I was afraid of him. I thought even further back to when I got my first professional massage as a form of self-care against my anxiety and depression, only to be more anxious than relaxed when I realized I had a male masseuse. He laughed at me when he saw that I had left almost all of my clothes on because he didn't understand. At the time, neither did I. I was embarrassed several times for being so jumpy around what were probably nice and professional men. However, as I watched Oprah speak, I remembered it. The reason I could be so on edge during a professional office visit. A visit, Your Honor, may I address the defendant? A visit to your office at the MSU Sports Medicine Clinic in 2010. I was only there once. At the age of 14, I went to see you as a dancer. I'm 22, and this visit still plagues my daily life. The detective I called my particular incident with you sexual contact. I was lucky. I did endure what a majority of these beautiful, resilient women who have come forward against their sexual abuser endured. That day in your office, my mom sat there. You made jokes during my treatment that were somehow supposed to justify groping my butt the entire time. You acted like rubbing and poking my butt was a part of the treatment. I felt uncomfortable, but because you were professional and because my mom didn't seem to notice anything wrong, I went with it. It wasn't till I walked out of your room and you slapped my butt that I knew everything had been wrong. Now at 22, I was ready to report you no matter how many years ago this had happened. I didn't want you to get to other women if you hadn't already. I didn't know. When I asked my boyfriend to help me find your name again, what a coincidence to see your face in a news article. These thoughts I had suppressed for years resurfaced with a vengeance, and now an adult cognizant of what you did, I feel violated all over again. It wasn't just the physical contact that was made, it was the cocky power that was asserted. The audacity of someone so egotistical they could fill me up in front of my mom. The power and the privilege that you received in America, in addition to your sick and twisted mind that even made you think you had that type of power. You did it because you could, and that will forever form how I act and how I move in spaces. I almost didn't come to give a statement today because I felt that what I went through has been less than those of other women. But I realize that's the type of thinking that makes women like me go through this world normalizing atrocities. I'm also purposely bringing race into my statement to remind everyone here that all intersections and power dynamics play a part in circumstances like this one. I want to recreate the moment for you all, because it wasn't just what happened in the office, it was reporting it. I wanted to recreate this moment for you all when my heart raced as I even looked up the police department to report Nassar. When it almost thumped out of my chest when I hit the police department and I knew they would come to my house. Was I really asking the police to come to my house as a black woman when every 28 hours a black person is killed by police or vigilante? To know the police department and the MSC detective and the AG department have been amazing. However, being here in Charlotte is even a sacrifice, where 93% of the population is white and a whopping 1% is black. These types of thoughts make coming forward against sexual harassment and assault all the more difficult, but like 200 strong women, I did it too. Nassar, you may have taken a toll, but I am learning how to regain my strength in many other ways. In ways I'm assuming you will never know, because your power was superficial. I want you to know it wasn't real power. What women have inherently is real power. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here today, Mariah. I'm glad that you made the decision to come. You're right, every voice counts, and your statement was very powerful, and I appreciate you sharing it with me.
Your Honor, the next survivor to speak has decided to be publicly identified. This is Brittany Schumann. Is that spelled correctly? Okay. Brittney. Last name Schummann. This is her husband, Mark, accompanying her to the podium.
I'm sorry, who is with her?
Her husband, Mark Schumann.
Oh, thank you for being here, Mark, as a support person. Brittany, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to present a statement here today. As most involved in the sport know, gymnastics is very difficult, emotionally, physically, and mentally. Larry should know this, best of all, dealing with thousands of athletes across his career. I'd like to start today by looking back at my career. I had talent and excelled from a young age, reaching the elite national team at age 11. This was the age that I was invited to my first national team training camp in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The ranch did not exist yet as the national team training center at that time. I experienced many successes through my time in the sport, but for some reason, while going through it and after my career, I saw it overall as a failure. You see, when you reach the elite level and are on the national team, the dream of going to the Olympics becomes more real and the ultimate goal. Gymnastics is your life, and sometimes it's hard to see anything after that. I made the 2001 World Championship team. I was sure I was on my way to that ultimate goal. My journey to get there, however, was not an easy one. A few months before World Trials, I had an accident in practice, resulting in a severe facial injury requiring emergent surgical correction. I didn't let this stop me. I continued to train and petitioned into World Trials. My prayers and hard work were answered, and I made the team. 1 week before I was to leave for a week of training camp at the ranch, followed by traveling to the championships, I fell off bars and broke my arm again, needing emergent surgical correction. I was devastated. Over the next 2 years, I continued to train and tried to come back, and even was given another assignment to compete internationally. Again, I thought I was on my way back, and while at the competition, I hurt both ankles at the same time badly enough that I had to return home and again have surgical correction. I made the tough decision after this injury that while I was healthy enough, I wanted to go to college on an athletic scholarship. I gave up my dream of the Olympics and went to college. I looked back on my career not understanding why these things had happened. Physically, I could do most anything my coach would teach me, but mentally there was something holding me back, not allowing me to show the world what I felt was my best performance. Each time I pushed through the mental side of the sport and was one step closer to my dream of the Olympics, it seemed I would physically get hurt. I simply couldn't win. This was extremely tough, and I battled depression for many years, prayed daily, and still couldn't understand why I had failed. I tell this story because for the first time in my life last week, I felt thankful for my lack of what I considered success in the sport, and I felt at peace. You see, when I was just 11 years old, at my first national team training camp, I met Larry Nasser, and unfortunately had a hamstring injury during that camp. I was sent to the training room, where it was just he and I. I was lying on my belly receiving treatment for my hamstring when Larry's ungloved fingers penetrated my vagina. Before I could really react to what was happening, he was quick to say, "This may be uncomfortable or weird, but this is the best kind of treatment for this injury." This happened again the next day in training camp. Thankfully, in the future, during the many training camps and competitions where Larry was present, I did not have to seek medical treatment. I was generally healthy until the injuries I shared with you above at the end of my elite career. I'm a believer in divine intervention. After listening to the powerful statements last week, it brought me peace and the ability to be thankful for what I considered a failed career due to the thought that if I had not been injured and I did actually go to world championships or even the Olympics, would Larry have abused me again or done something worse? After hearing the story of even worse abuse that occurred to those who were fortunate enough to see their dream come true as Olympians, I was thankful that mine had not. I believe those roadblocks, as painful physically, emotionally, and mentally as they were, was God stepping in and protecting me from more harm from Larry. God had a different purpose for me and my life. Today I'm a wife, mother, and a practicing physician in OBGYN. I provide care, education, and empowerment to women on a daily basis. This is what compelled me today to make a statement. I'm making this statement because by staying anonymous, how can I say that I'm an advocate for women's health and encourage my patients to be empowered if I can't do it for myself? I'm here today to say to Larry, you're a disgrace to our profession. How dare you say you were a good doctor and were providing treatments? In an interview, you once said you'd done thousands of vaginal exams. Anyone in the medical profession would ask why. You were a sports medicine doctor. Anyone would agree with me. There's no valid reason to penetrate an adolescent girl's introitus for a sports injury with the exception of maybe a straddle injury. You're fooling no one. As a physician who performs these types of exams daily on a wide range of females, these were not treatments. The decision to perform an exam of this type is not taken lightly and often requires taking the time to discuss with the patient and parent whether this exam is absolutely vital. This claim is just another way you're trying to manipulate the public and judges to believe your sick and twisted lies. What happened to informed consent, parental consent, chaperones, and the first responsibility as a physician to do no harm? Shame on you. I know what training comes with becoming a physician, including different specialties. No physician would back your claim that these were necessary and true treatments. Every physician knows that to provide treatment without consent or knowledge of that procedure is assault. You assaulted me. In my situation, regardless of your claim that you're performing a procedure is irrelevant. There's no justification. I had no knowledge of what you were about to do, and you certainly did not have my consent. You took vows to do no harm and to keep the patient's best interest at the forefront of treatment. You broke these vows and caused harm hundreds of times. Again, shame on you. Shame on USA Gymnastics for putting adolescent, innocent girls in a situation where a male physician can be alone in their hotel room or training room under the guise of treatment. How dare you say that we, the survivors, are trying to capitalize on monetary gain or exaggerate our story for media purposes? Again, just another example of how you're still trying to manipulate, damage, and take advantage of a vulnerable population. You vastly underestimated us. You're clearly not sorry for what you've done. You're sorry you were caught. You and the other parties who are responsible need to be held accountable. Shame on USA Gymnastics and Michigan State University for standing by you without question when allegations were brought about. To all the people who have said they blame the parents and coaches of athletes or state that you don't understand why more girls and women do not come forward, this next message is for you. I know this nightmare is hard to understand. Believe me, as a parent myself, I have a hard time understanding how this could have occurred with any one of my children. But I lived in this world, and I survived his abuse. USA Gymnastics created an environment that was completely isolated. Parents did not attend training camps and were kept separate from athletes during competitions. I know there are exceptions, but for the most part, coaches are good people trying to help their athletes succeed, and they also put their trust in USA Gymnastics and Larry Nasser. This abuse was so successfully normalized that by the time I was 16 years old at one of the camps, I remember sitting in a room with my fellow teammates and many of us stating that we had received similar treatments from Larry for similar injuries. It was hard to think that it was all that abnormal. He took advantage of a vulnerable, innocent population over and over. I understand why many girls may not have told anybody or what happened to them, because in our world, it wasn't necessarily unusual. It's not until later in life when you're a mature adult that you realize how wrong it all was. I wish I could go back to my 11-year-old self and tell her to tell someone, make sure she knew that it was wrong. Perhaps then 20 years would not have gone by where hundreds of other girls had to experience similar or worse treatments as I did. Perhaps a father and a fellow gymnast would not have taken their own lives. This is a guilt and a sadness that I have to deal with daily now. Then I have to remind myself I was just an 11-year-old, innocent girl trying to pursue such an impossible dream. You, Larry, USA Gymnastics, and Michigan State are the ones who are responsible. You all should be held accountable. I urge you today, Judge, to sentence Larry to the harshest punishment possible by law, and urge that the others accountable are investigated and have to answer to their failed actions. Larry, in the end, I and we, my fellow survivors, have won. We're strong, have a voice, and are making a difference for girls and women in our sport. I will continue to care for and educate my patients about their bodies and empower them to stand up for themselves. I will continue to honor my commitment to do no harm and keep my patients' best interests first. The two vital promises all physicians make that you failed hundreds of times over. Physicians at large are good people with good intentions. Unfortunately, someone like you tarnishes the trust we work so hard daily to earn. It's a privilege and it's an honor to be able to take care of women in their time of need. You've abused that privilege and lost that honor of ever being referred to as a physician more than 20 years ago. No apology will ever be enough. The accountability starts now with you, and it will continue until the sport we all love and dedicate our lives to is safe for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here today. I am very glad that you made the decision to come forward to advocate not just for yourself, but to advocate for all the other women. As lay people, we do hear the phrase, do no harm, as the oath that doctors take, but you have a unique understanding of the education and the training and the oath that you took. And I'm sure that also brings with it a level of hurt knowing that this doctor violated that oath. But we are grateful that we have a doctor like you who understands the oath, and you'll provide to your patients an understanding and empathy that many doctors cannot tap into. And so I really appreciate you being here today, and I appreciate, Mark, you being here with her. Thank you very much.
Your Honor, the next survivor you will hear from has requested to be anonymous. And I want to just clarify, though, do you wish to not have your photograph or face video taped?
My picture's fine, just on my face.
Okay, so I would ask if the cameras can point either to the judge or the defendant. I think the picture she is okay with me displaying without her name. We have identified her as victim number 235.
Victim number 235, is it okay if your voice is heard?
Yes.
Yeah, so what we're asking then is that it's the photo that's up on the screen, but not what she looks like today standing here, but you can record and disseminate her words as she talks, okay?
And Your Honor, her mother and stepfather are here to support her at the podium.
Thank you very much for being with her today. Whenever you're ready, I'm ready to listen, okay?
Thank you. Judge Cunningham, thank you for giving us all the time to speak and listen to our unique stories, despite the many similarities between them all. I also wanted to thank those who came before me, both in Ingham County and on Wednesday. All of the young ladies who told their stories are to be considered heroes, not only because they had enough courage to speak up, but also because they helped so many others by doing so. It took me listening to some of the other girls to really understand what happened to me. I'm not sure I still fully have comprehended it all. I'm trying to pick up and sort out all of the pieces as memories come flooding back. I started gymnastics at a very young age and would have the occasional sprained ankle or excessive bruising from repeated falling and getting back up. It kept me busy as a child and helped me to develop passionate feelings and great time management skills. However, I fell in love with dance, ballet especially. I switched studios in the 4th grade to one that was focused solely on dance and became a competitive dancer. I would dance up to 4 nights a week and up to 10 hours a day on the weekends. When I was 15, a sophomore in high school, I started to experience severe back pain, pain that would shoot down into my legs so bad that I would fall to the ground. My parents took me to every doctor in the area they knew. Many of them said there wasn't anything wrong, and perhaps dance just wasn't for me. Perhaps I should find a new hobby. But dance wasn't a hobby for me. It was my life. My mom turned to all resources she could, back to the gym I first started, where we were recommended to Larry Nasser. I remember walking into his office at MSU. The walls were filled with special autographs from Olympic gymnasts that I grew up seeing. There was one room that had a special picture of ballerinas on the wall. That was my favorite. Larry was so kind and so welcoming, understanding our frustration with other doctors who told me they couldn't help. He spoke to me from a dancer's perspective, even using ballet terminology, something that doctors, especially male doctors, never did. The appointments themselves are now a blur to me. I'm trying my best to sort them out as little pieces come back. However, I do remember the procedure he did to me. It happened more than once, because I remember after a while that it was normal for our visits. The office assistants would give me baggy clothes to put on, a thought that now brings back horrible feelings in my stomach because I now know what those oversized clothes meant. He'd have me lay on my stomach with his body hovering over me and acting as a barrier between my mom and I, while he penetrated me with his fingers from behind. I would do anything to go back to that moment, to have even a second of eye contact with my mom, because she would have seen the pain and the uncomfortable feelings I was experiencing. For over a year, my mom and I would travel close to once a week from Bay City to Lansing for appointments with Larry or other specialists he referred us to. During this period of time, I had missed a lot of school and needed to get 2 study hall periods to allow time for all of my appointments. I needed to sleep in a reclining chair because laying in a bed hurt so bad. I am thankful for Larry and the resources he connected me to overcome such a terrible injury. But the actual appointments with him caused more pain than healing. I would like to address the defendant, if I may. Larry, you took advantage of me during a time period that is already extremely hard in most girls' lives. Early high school years can be daunting and taxing on adolescent feelings already, and you played right into my naivety. You knew just how much dancing meant to me, so I would do anything to dance one more day. For many years after that, and up until a few weeks ago, I thought you weren't abusing me. You were simply performing a miracle. So I kept quiet about any feelings I had, put my head down, and pushed forward with life. I even went as far is to defend you at the start of all of the allegations. I was a part of your act. I am embarrassed that I ever thought you were a good person, a doctor, and a miracle worker. I feel a sense of guilt for sending girls to you, girls that look to me, or girls that I look to as little sisters. In the last few weeks, you have completely turned my world upside down. Not only did you take advantage of me, but you also took advantage of hundreds of parents that felt helpless as their daughters were in unbearable pain for your own sense of pleasure. You deceived the world, but your act has come to an end. I'm currently a student at MSU working on my master's degree in social work. I remember the exact moment I was accepted to MSU. It was a dream come true because of their incredible reputation. Similar to the feelings I had when I was a patient of Larry Nassar, I felt extremely blessed to be under the care of someone who has such amazing reputation in the medical world and in the world of sports like gymnastics and dance. Like my feelings towards you, Larry, my feelings towards MSU have changed as well, and I feel hurt and betrayed. I have overwhelming anxiety even stepping foot on campus, making my attendance at classes extremely difficult. However, I'm going to stay true to the profession I love, and I'm going to be strong and continue my education so I can be there for my clients 100%. Even before my time at MSU, I would struggle every day with anxiety and trust issues. I would get really worked up over small things like academic exams or a trip to the doctor's office. I'd push many people away because I could not open up to them or trust them. Up until a few weeks ago, I thought this is just who I grew up to be. Now I have to wonder if it's all because of my horrifying experiences in the MSU clinic with Larry. Thankfully, I have many people who push back when I try to push away, and they stand here with me today. I may have stayed quiet for far too long, but I'm joining a sisterhood of strong, independent, and powerful survivors who will continue to fight as advocates for sexual assault awareness so girls never have to feel like they have to stay quiet again. Thank you.
It really took a lot for you to do it, and I love the smile on your face.
Thank you.
I think that it shows that you know that there's no reason to feel embarrassed anymore, and I hope the hurt and betrayal go away, but I hope being here, just speaking, will help you heal, and I hope your parents get to see that smile a lot going forward.
I hope so too.
Thank you very much.
You.
Your Honor, the next survivor you will hear from has agreed to be publicly identified. This is Caitlin Basil, K-A-I-T-L-Y-N. Last is B-A-S-E-L, and she is accompanied at the podium by her best friend.
Your Honor, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my story. This has been an incredible struggle, and I didn't expect to be here today, but I feel that my story needs to be told. Larry Nasser probably won't recognize me, but with the vast amount of women who he has abused, how many of us will he really be able to remember? How many faces will he be able to place? My name is Caitlin Basil. When I was 12, I went to see Larry Nasser for an injury that had occurred during a dance competition. Dance was the most important thing in my life, and my leg injury was making it almost impossible to perform in practice. When you dance competitively, stopping for injury is not an option. You're taught to work through the pain until you're unable to walk, and that's what I did. For 2 months, I danced on my injury until I was incapable of continuing. I thought that my hamstring was torn, and Dr. Nasser was recommended to my mom because he was the best. So I went in to see him at the MSU Sports Medicine office in the Ide building, and he confirmed that I had a serious injury and needed treatment. He equated what he was going to do to a deep tissue massage, neglecting to explain further to me or my mom. When I went to see him next, he had me lay down on my stomach on the table. He then proceeded to sexually assault me for 45 minutes with my mother in the room, blocking her view with his body. With an ungloved hand, he penetrated my 12-year-old body while I laid frozen on the table, unsure of how to react. I had no idea what was happening. I was scared and confused and most of all, humiliated. I went to see Nasser 2 more times after that, and each time he sexually abused me. Eventually, I told my mom that he was creepy and that I didn't want to go back. I, unlike so many of these survivors, was fortunate enough to be able to stop seeing him. I never thought much about what had happened after the fact. Being as young as I was, I told myself that what Nasser had done must have been a legitimate medical procedure, something that was perfectly normal for athletes to go through. After all, he was the best doctor there was. He was highly recommended. I put it out of my mind until a couple of years later when I was 14 and had just started high school. I don't remember why it was brought up, but it was, and I was older. I was less naive. As I tried to explain what had happened to one of my friends, I began to understand exactly what had occurred. My doctor had penetrated me in an indisputably inappropriate way without giving me any notice or opportunity to consent. He had used my innocence to take advantage of me when I was only 12 years old, and he had used my trusting nature to fulfill his own perverted and pedophilic desires. I attempted to bring this issue up to my mother without being specific as to what exactly had occurred in Dr. Nassar's office, and my mom, like any adult would, said that it was a medical procedure. He was a doctor, and a good one, and I was just overreacting. Would a doctor sexually assault a 12-year-old girl with her mother in the room? Again, I tried to put the issue out of my mind, but with my newfound understanding that what Nasser had done was wrong, came a complete distrust in every medical professional. While I once had complete faith in my doctors, I was now suspicious and uncomfortable around them. My trust was replaced with overwhelming anxiety at every appointment I went to. Whenever a male doctor would touch me, I would be filled with a sense of panic and dread, fearing that they would take advantage of me the way Nasser had. I was mentally wrecked, but I kept my mouth shut. Who would believe me over this completely respected doctor? It's important to know that sexual assault can begin to affect you even before you fully comprehend what has happened. It changes your personality, your mood, and how you interact with others. As more time passed, I fell into a deeper and deeper depression. I became isolated from my friends, my family, and my teammates. 7 years after the incident, I've been diagnosed with clinical depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and post-traumatic stress disorder. I've resorted to self-harm, covering my body in scars, trying to cope with the emotional pain that Nasser has caused me. And now, the scars on my legs and arms are just painful reminders of the trauma I've suffered. I've attempted suicide several times since suffering abuse at his hands. I've been seeing therapist after therapist for the last 6 years with inconclusive results. Being unable to process what had happened to me, my counselors could not figure out the source of my pain. Because of this, it's been much harder for me to develop healthy relationships and to function like a normal teenager. This abuse has put strain on my relationship with my parents, causing a distance between us without even being aware of the cause. I constantly fought with them and separated myself from my family. I preferred to be alone in my misery than to face what had happened. Additionally, I turned the sport that I loved into a constant reminder of the abuse that I had suffered. As the years went on, dancing became harder and harder for me. I separated myself from my teammates, knowing that none of them understood what had happened to me. I distanced myself from the sport as well, missing practices and not being fully committed to the team. In time, my teammates and my coaches pulled away from me as well. The people who had once been my family turned their backs on me. All they saw was the empty shell of an athlete that Nasser had turned me into, and they didn't understand why I was acting this way. I was alone, left to suffer in solitude. I was incapable of dealing with what had happened to me, and as an indirect result, my dancing career ended and my life was suddenly even more empty. When I graduated and went to college in 2016, I was attempting to leave all my suffering behind. I chose a school out of state, hoping to get as far away from my pain as I could. This quickly backfired. My anxiety and depression worsened with me in a strange place so far away from everyone I knew. I started having panic attacks and was unable to leave my dorm room most days. Eventually, it got so bad that I had to drop out of school and move back to Michigan to be closer to my family and my support system. Last year, when the claims against Nasser became public, all of this trauma was brought up again. More and more survivors came forward, including several famous athletes, women who I looked up to and respected. I tried to ease my mind, telling myself that it didn't matter if I came forward, that he was going to be imprisoned anyway.
I told myself that my voice wouldn't have nearly as much impact as all these other well-known women, and that I was okay with being a victim that didn't come forward. In my mind, there was nothing I could say that hadn't already been said. However, I couldn't ignore the anger that I had towards this man for what he had done to me. I started having painful flashbacks, remembering what he had done to me so long ago. It got so bad that I was having difficulty sleeping and difficulty eating, and that's when I decided to come forward. Looking at the comments on posts online, people question why it would take a victim so long to come forward against such a sick man. They wonder why it took so long for him to get caught, especially when in so many cases the survivor's parents were in the room. What these speculators need to understand is that Larry Nasser is a master of manipulation. This monster found the perfect way to prey on young girls. From a young age, he trained us to believe that he was a saint, that he could help us, and without him we couldn't get better. He tricked our parents into thinking that he was a legitimate doctor. This made it so much easier to take advantage of us. We truly believed that he was performing a legitimate medical procedure. And when we finally realized that we had been abused, it was humiliating. It's hard to come forward as a victim of sexual assault in a society that doesn't treat abuse as seriously as it should. Many of us thought that no one would listen to our stories. But their strength in numbers and over 100 brave women have come forward against this monster. We're supporting each other and helping each other. We are a force, and we refuse to be silenced. When I was 12 years old, Larry Nasser turned me into a victim. I was a young, innocent pre-teen. And all of a sudden, because of this twisted man, I was a survivor of sexual assault. He used me and so many others to fill his pedophilic desires when we were nothing but children. He made us think that we had no choice, that he was helping us. Not only that, but he humiliated us to the point where we were afraid to tell anyone. Nasser's hurt too many women, and it is so important that he never has the ability to hurt anyone again. He deserves to spend the rest of his miserable life in prison for what he has done to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming forward. I'm glad that you have your best friend with you. And to the extent that you thought your voice wasn't as important as someone who may be more well-known, that's not true. Your voice is very equal. It is equally important to me. What you said today is very impactful. And I hope in some way it helps you. And remember, if someone has not gone through a sexual assault, they do not have the right to judge you. They do not have the right to make any comment about how you handle that. Okay? Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Your Honor, the next survivor is Jenny Johnstone, right? Not Johnson, Johnstone, and she is a student at Montana State University. We think she may be watching right now, or at some point. This is her mom and dad, Chris and Tom, right? Johnstone.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
Chris and Tom.
Okay.
Johnstone, and I believe Chris will be speaking on behalf of her daughter, and her photograph is displayed on our screen.
And I think if your daughter is watching, you're looking at the gentleman in the red plaid shirt, is it, or in the striped shirt? That's where she'd be watching you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Whenever you're ready, I'm ready to hear your story, your daughter's story.
Right. Thank you first, Your Honor, for letting me speak on behalf of my daughter, Jenny, and then also just for letting all the victims speak. Their voices definitely need to be heard. In 2010, I had a shoulder injury come up, and the first doctor I was told to see was Larry Nassar. Coaches, neighbors, and family friends had all suggested his name because not only was he well known, but also he was supposed to be incredible at what he did. Little did I know that he was just using his popularity in the community to abuse and take advantage of young female athletes. My very first appointment was scheduled with Dr. Lemon at MSU Sports Medicine, and during that appointment, she told me to schedule a follow-up and suggested I see Larry. Dr. Lemon became my primary doctor at MSU Sports Medicine from 2010 to 2014, but I did have 4 appointments with Larry Nassar. After discussing with my mom that I had suffered from a back and hip injury, Larry decided I would benefit from manipulation on my back, hip, and pelvic areas.
only 3 appointments. That's all it took for Larry to prey on me. I was 15, and I put all my trust into him because he was my doctor. And why would my doctor hurt me? But he did. And each time as I winced in pain, I would pray for what seemed like hours until he was finished. It took me a long time to come forward because at the time, I didn't know any better. I knew it felt wrong, but how was I supposed to know it was wrong? At the same time, my parents were going through a divorce that was difficult for the both of them, and I was scared to bring more concern into their lives. It took watching so many beautiful, strong women come forward and face you to realize I wasn't alone and I needed to be heard. So this is me coming forward, not as a victim, but as a survivor of your disgusting crimes. I don't want an apology or even a word from you, Larry, because I know it is not genuine. And I know that as a petty apology, I could never accept. It's about time someone who thought he was once invincible spend the rest of his life being punished with the voices and words of such strong young women, including myself, engraved in his mind forever. Thank you. I love you, Judy.
Chris and Tom for being here. I hope that Jennifer got to watch her statement being read and that it helps her also. Again, thank you very much for being here.
Your Honor, the next survivor you will hear from has told me that she is comfortable being publicly identified. This is Kathleen Levettete, and it's spelled Lovelette. Oh, okay. I'm glad. Okay. I'm going to let her spell her own last name.
Okay.
It's Lovelette.
And she is accompanied at the podium by her husband.
So it's Lovelette?
Levettete.
Levettete. Thank you, Kathleen.
First, I want to thank all the survivors who gave impact statements in the last weeks. Your incredible strength and courage has inspired me. Before now, I wanted to remain anonymous, but your statements have had a profound effect on me, moving me to take action. It's been extremely hard coming to this decision to speak publicly without anonymity. There were so many things I had to consider. I had to ask myself, will this affect my husband and daughters? They are my first priority. How will I be portrayed in the public eye and in the media? I was not a young gymnast. I was a woman in my 30s, not a girl or a young woman. Will they judge me and say I should have known better? With my family's support, I decided the risk was worth the reward. I hope that by speaking publicly, I can inspire other women in my position and not be afraid or embarrassed by the shame society puts upon them. I am taking a chance that the support I have from my family and friends will far surpass the judgment put upon me. So today, I step out of the shadows and into the light. I stand before you, Larry, as a survivor of your horrific and sick abuse. I stand here as a mother of 2 children. I stand here as the mother of 2 beautiful and strong daughters, and I want them to know they should never have to go through this pain and anguish. I want them to know they have a voice and to never be afraid to speak up when something is wrong. I have always told my girls to trust their gut, to do the right thing, and to stand up for what they believe in no matter the cost. I don't want to teach this to them with words, but instead by example. I feel like I let them down because I didn't listen to my gut. However, I did do the right thing by making a police report, and now I'm standing up for the change I believe needs to happen. I suffer from chronic back pain that began decades ago. I have tried many treatments, including countless injections, physical therapy, prolotherapy, acupuncture, a rhizotomy, and a spinal fusion surgery that took months to recover from. Nothing worked. Imagine living in pain day in and day out. And then I was referred to Larry. I was excited. He was the renowned doctor for the women's Olympic gymnastics team. He was supposed to be the best in the country. He worked for Michigan State University and worked with their athletes. He must be good if these organizations I respected selected him. I felt privileged and lucky to see him. Lying on the table the first time he violated me, just like he did so many other girls and women, I was frozen. No warning, no explanation, no one else in the room, and of course, no gloves. I thought, what is happening? Is this okay? Is this really happening? Is this right? I was paralyzed, not knowing what to think. I noticed there was no sink in the room. He used hand sanitizer after he was done. This is weird, I thought. He must wash his hands outside the room, right? Questions raced through my head after it happened, and have continued to race through my head throughout the years. I thought about him treating gymnasts and convinced myself he couldn't be doing this to those young girls. There's no way he could be the Olympic team doctor if he was doing this. He was nice and told me to call him Larry. He made me feel like I was his friend. He would hug me at the end of visits. I trusted him because he was a doctor. So I suppressed my gut feeling that knew this was wrong, believing he was the one who was finally going to fix me. After all, why wouldn't I trust him? He was the renowned doctor supported by USA Gymnastics at MSU. Of course, his medical procedure didn't help. I still have back pain today, but my reality is my back pain pales in comparison to the emotional pain I felt then and continue to feel today. It's difficult to put into words everything I feel. How could I be so naive? I've always seen myself as a strong woman and raised my daughters to be strong women too. But now I constantly doubt myself and feel weak. I feel embarrassed and ashamed that I let it happen to me. I'm an adult who should have known better. Maybe someone would have listened to me if I reported him and stopped him from continuing to abuse more girls and women. I feel extreme guilt for not telling someone. Maybe they would have listened to an adult. When the India Star article came out, my heart sank. I knew immediately it was true. I knew my gut was right. Even though it had been years since I last saw him, it made everything so much worse because the justification was wrong. I realized I was a sexual assault victim, something I never, ever thought I would say. You can't explain what that feels like unless you have experienced it yourself. Guilt, shame, embarrassment, denial, anger, fear, confusion, disbelief. All of these swirl together in your mind, picking up speed like a tornado, trying to rip you apart. Once I realized his medical procedure was not medical at all, I was confused. Why did you do this to me? I'm not his typical victim. I have run scenarios over and over through my mind, trying to find an answer. My only conclusion is I am not the only older woman he has assaulted. I hope by speaking today, I can give other women like myself a voice. These feelings are manifesting physically too. I often can't sleep, and when I do, I have nightmares. I'm not eating well. It's difficult to turn my brain off, to make sense of it all. I often start crying and can't stop. It's causing me to have panic attacks. It's affecting my intimacy with my husband, who has made me feel safe for 24 years. One of the worst things is worry. I worry about my daughters away at college. Have I taught them what is okay and what is not okay? Are they safe on campus or going to a doctor? Have I showed them how to trust their gut, to be strong enough to leave a bad situation and tell someone? I worry about other doctors I see and question what they are doing. Larry's abuse is causing me terrible self-doubt, which is not like me. These feelings continue to seep into my thoughts no matter what I do to keep them out. How could I not realize I was being abused? Listening to survivors give impact statements was heartbreaking. I feel so much empathy for them and their parents. As a parent, I can only imagine the guilt and pain you may feel and what has happened to your child. My heart breaks for you. All I can say to all of them is it wasn't your fault. Logically, I know it wasn't my fault, but that doesn't stop the pain, the anxiety attacks, the distrust, the self-doubt, or anger. I feel some relief knowing Larry will rot in jail the rest of his life. It has helped me heal in the slightest way knowing this. It will never be totally healed. I will have to live with this for the rest of my life. Why did this happen? How was he allowed to get away with this for so long unchecked? I now know why. Many officials at USAG and at MSU whose jobs and duty was to report him did the opposite. 2 different gymnasts reported Larry to Kathy Klages in 1997. It could have ended 20 years ago. How many survivors would never have felt this pain, me included, if someone listened? They protected him. Larry could not do this all by himself. He had enablers all around him to insulate him and convince his victims that he was doing nothing wrong, that these girls and women just don't understand what he is doing. Let me tell all the girls and women out there that you do understand when you are uncomfortable. You do understand when something is not right. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, and don't let them do anything to you until you do understand. Trust your gut. I grew up in Lansing and have been a Spartan fan my whole life. I used to be proud to be a Spartan. Today, I'm sad to be a Spartan. I can't express how Michigan State University's response to this abuse has compounded my pain. I used to wear MSU gear proudly, especially when traveling and when I tailgated on campus. I cannot bring myself to wear Spartan gear anymore. How could this institution I believed in not show sympathy and support for the victims? Every statement from Glenn Simon talked about how there is no cover-up and no one believed he was doing anything wrong. I ask, how many women does it take to believe? How many women does it take to just conduct a proper investigation? Apparently it took over 150, and we all know there are hundreds more. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Michigan State University trustee Joel Ferguson goes on the radio and belittles this Nasser thing as some distraction as they deal with all the other more important things going on at MSU, like the beautiful additions to the Breslin Center and all the donations Ms. Simon was able to raise that made that happen. Maybe me and my sister survivors just need to go walk around the Breslin Center and we'll all feel much better. Maybe that'll take away the pain and guilt. Or maybe Michigan State University's culture needs to change. When you consider the consistent statements from multiple leadership positions refusing to apologize or accept any responsibility for enabling 20 years of sexual abuse when it didn't have to happen, it is clear change is needed. The recent developments at MSU and the letter from the Board of Trustees apologizing is a step in the right direction. However, their apologies are difficult to accept and believe because it only happened after MSU denied it for a year and a half and after 156 girls and women publicly told the horrors of how it affected them. Only time will reveal the sincerity behind the commitment to change. I am here today because my hope is my statement will foster change, that not only MSU, USAG, USOC, and Twistars will change, but also other organizations will recognize how important it is to listen and take action. Rachel Denhollander raised a very important questions during her impact statement and press conference that must be answered. I want to add one simple question to that list. My question is, why is it so difficult to do the right thing? People often want to make this question much more complicated than it really is. Why is it so difficult for coaches, trainers, psychologists, and others to do the right thing? If Larry was such a great guy and such a great doctor, then why not fill out the proper forms and let investigation prove it? Why was that so hard to do? The answer, of course, is it isn't hard to do. It just takes someone to do his or her job. It's that simple. Unfortunately, people believed Larry's reputation was worth more than doing the right thing. I stand before you today full of hope and fear. I fear that nothing will change, that this will slowly fade out of the spotlight and the culture of ignoring women will return. I fear that my daughters will experience this abuse sometime in their lives. I fear that I will never trust doctors again, even though most of them are trying to help me. I feel that I will never trust myself again, which is the worst fear of all. But I am hopeful. I hope that standing here today with the other survivors will help me heal. I hope my daughters will see how much they matter and how much we can make a difference when we stand together against abuse. I hope women, both young and old, around the world will see how important it is to speak out. If one person doesn't listen, tell someone else. Don't stop until someone listens, because what you have to say is important. I hope my statement today will help other survivors out there like me who might be afraid to come forward. To all of you, I have to say, you are not alone. You have a sisterhood of survivors waiting with open arms to welcome you should you decide to come forward. Most of all, I hope that out of this horrific abuse the survivors and I have had to endure and will continue to endure for a long time, that it at least brings lasting change. I hope I never have to hear about this systematic abuse ever again. I stand before you today strongly refusing to let Larry Nassar's sexual assault define me. I will define myself based on the change that my statement, along with those of my sister survivors, will help create. May it be swift, thorough, and enduring. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
And thank you for being here today. No one will say that you should have known better, and if they did, shame on them. Absolutely. You did not let something happen to you. You've been harmed physically and emotionally by the criminal acts of a doctor. That's what occurred. But your bravery to come here today, you have shown that sexual assault can happen at any age. And I'm sure that you don't even realize what you've done today by other individuals that have seen what you've done today and can realize that they too have suffered. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you. And thank you for being with your wife here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be taking a 10-minute break according to the clock on the wall. It is 5 to 11. I will be back at 5 after 11.
All rise. All rise for the second session.
Thank you. Please be seated. And we are back on the record in the People versus Lawrence Nassar, file 17217 FC. We will continue with the victim impact statements. Ms. Povalides, our next individual.
So the next survivor, Your Honor, has requested to be anonymous.
Okay.
And there is another unique request. This is victim 210. Initially, she had asked our office to read her statement on her behalf, which we will do. Her parents are also in the courtroom. Her dad has asked me to ask the court, even before today and again after today, if he would be able to speak. I am told he is a very peaceful man. He appreciates, and I don't say that, I mean, it is, I guess, blatant, but also truthful. I have met with him, I have talked with him, I will stand with him. He is begging, Your Honor, to allow him the opportunity to say a few words.
Does he also wish to be anonymous?
He does. But he is, I think, my understanding is they're fine with the camera's audio recording their statement, just not their face.
Everybody good with that? Everybody all set? Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Povalides.
Okay, I will read his daughter's statement. Again, this is victim number 210. For the longest time, I have been in denial about the sexual abuse done to me by Larry Nasser. This week has been one of the hardest weeks of my life.
I have felt alone for the longest time about what I went through and what was done to me, but I now know that I am not. After listening to all of the girls' statements about what Larry Nassar did to them, I knew that I was one of the many victims that went through exactly what I did. Listening to what they had to say helped me grow out of denial and give me the strength to write this statement so that I can overcome these experiences and come out even stronger. I will no longer let Larry Nassar deprive me of my pride, happiness, and my own life. I began seeing Nasser at the end of 2012 due to newly occurring back pain. I began going to see Nasser more and more as my back pain progressively got worse. The more we went to him, the more trusted he became, mostly him and my father. They became very close friends to the point where my father would buy him his favorite Colombian cigars. They texted back and forth and emailed each other, even about things not regarding me or anything medical related. I also established a very close relationship with Nassar. My dad and I once decided to give him a trophy saying #1 doctor on it. He also knew that, and I'm going to butcher this name, and it shows how little I know about gymnastics. He also knew that Nastia Lukin was my favorite gymnast, so he gave me a plush rhino signed by her. He made me feel so special, which he soon used against me. He would do things like this that led both me and my dad to believe he was some sort of saint who wanted to do nothing but help people straight from the goodness of his heart. He would tell me how he would see gymnasts for free sometimes, such as at the Michigan State gymnastics meet on the weekends, which is where I met him for the first time. Larry Nassar used both mine and my father's trust to hurt and deceive us. After he established a deep trust with us, he began to do, quote, manipulations, unquote, or, quote, treatments, unquote, on me. He would explain to me how what he was doing was going to help my back, so we didn't question his methods, as he was a trusted friend to us at this point. As I lay on the table fully exposed, I felt so powerless and helpless as I listened to Nassar talk to my dad while he was hurting me, which at this point was no longer quote-unquote treatment, but sexual abuse. I felt as though what he was doing was odd, but I figured that since everyone said he was the absolute best doctor, it must have been okay. Nassar abused the most innocent parts of me, and I feel as though that took away a large piece of my childhood that I won't be able to get back. Nassar has hurt me in ways that I may never be able to heal from, and will always be a part of me and who I am. No girl should ever have this taken away from them, and no girl should ever have to live in fear. He took advantage of both me and my father and used his position and high status as a way to manipulate and hurt me. Up until now, I have felt as though what he did to me was my fault. I blamed myself for months up until this point. I became severely depressed to the point where I had very strong thoughts of taking my own life and taking an unsafe amount of pills. I felt so weak. I have also had sleeplessness, horrible nightmares, and anxiety. I beat myself up about not ever saying anything to anyone, but I trusted Nassar, and I wanted nothing but to get rid of the back pain that I continue to have. I would feel that if I had said something, then maybe a lot of girls wouldn't have had to go through the same physical and mental pain that I, along with what many other girls had to go through. I now know that it was not my fault, but the monster and master manipulator who committed these sick crimes. I now hate going to the doctor and refuse to go regardless of how sick I am. It hurts me to know that my father will always have regrets about continuously taking me to the doctor who sexually assaulted me as he sat in the same room. But the only one to blame here is the sexual predator who preyed upon innocent young women and used their trust against them. I have gone to therapy but refused to open up because Larry forever damaged my trust. He took my confidence, and I don't know if I will ever be able to love myself the same way I did before. He took my innocence away from me, and that is something very valuable to me that I will never be able to get back. I may not be able to take back the years of mental suffering that I endured, but I will be able to become stronger from them. It brings me relief knowing that this monster will never be able to hurt and destroy another beautiful soul again. Up until now, I have been suppressing these horrible experiences and having them never be heard. So writing this and getting everything out and having my voice heard by people that truly care has helped me come to terms and put this all behind me so that I can move forward with my life. Nasser may have taken a lot from me, but he will never take away the love that I have for gymnastics and will continue to have. Victim 210.
Thank you very much. Please let victim 210 know that I appreciate her taking the time to write the impact statement. It was powerful, and the court will take that into consideration. Her father may now come up for brief words that are
He is accompanied at the podium by both his wife and his coach. And I just remind that no cameras, please, on the family. Just audio is fine. And I will stand here as well.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Go ahead, sir.
Sorry what happened earlier this morning. On behalf of all the parents, I promise you I will not be violent. This is my wife and coach of our gym. Judge Cunningham, thank you for the opportunity to speak as a parent of one of the many courageous survivors of this horrific tragedy. Like many of the parents of the sister survivors, my wife and I feel tremendous guilt and are hurting badly inside. The question we ask over and over is, how could we have let this happen to our sweet and innocent daughter? We were told that he is a cure-all doctor for gymnastics-related injuries and ailments. We were also told by many that he was an incredibly good person. After the first visit, we felt like he was a saint for doing what he does to help young athletes. We felt so honored for our daughter to be treated by him. Over the span of 3 years, I personally took our daughter to nearly every visit to Larry at MSU Sports Medicine. There were dozens of visits, and as time passed, I built a close relationship with him, and he managed to earn my utmost trust and respect, something that doesn't come easily for me. I trusted him with my daughter's well-being, and despite our daughter having seen virtually no benefit from his treatments, I continued to trust him and have faith that he would eventually cure her. 5 years have passed since we met Larry, and after major back surgery and 2 ankle surgeries, she unfortunately is in even more pain now than when she felt during her first visit. Our daughter kept telling us that he is not helping her pain, but we kept telling her to be patient and that Larry would fix her. After every visit, she would leave MSU extremely down and quiet. Little did I know and realize why she was always down. Eventually, we stopped seeing Larry toward the end of 15 after her back surgery. Since we stopped seeing Larry, our daughter refuses to see any doctor or therapist. We thought it was because she just lost her confidence in doctors after Larry could not help to alleviate her pain. His countless manipulation treatments, as he called them, had no effect on her physical well-being. Instead, he was manipulating me to believe he is a saint and managed to gain such respect to the point where I trusted him with our daughter's life and delicate body. Several months have passed, and then Rachel Denhollander came out to accuse Larry Nassar of sexual abuse. I, like many other parents, immediately went into denial mode. I refused to believe her, and I just could not comprehend or accept that Larry the saint could do such a thing. After asking our daughter if Larry had abused her, she adamantly said no. I immediately texted Larry offering my support, and even agreed to submit an affidavit per his request attesting to his character. I was ready to send the affidavit to his lawyer, and then the second and third girls came out. I then started believing that there could be some truth to the accusations. As the situation unfolded, I finally accepted that he was capable of doing these terrible things to all these young and innocent girls. I asked our daughter a few more times whether she was a victim or not, and each time she said no. I naively believed her and believed that Larry had such a personal relationship with us that although he abused the other girls, he did not touch our daughter. I also subconsciously wanted to keep hearing no from her because I did not want to face the truth that so many young women were facing. I truly believed that our daughter was somehow spared from these monstrous acts until she finally came out late last week. After listening to the countless courageous girls who gave impact statements, our daughter developed the ability to say what was buried so deep inside of her for so long. Ever since she came out, I feel very bad inside, and I feel so much guilt. This has changed me forever. How could I have failed as a parent to recognize the horrible abuse right before my eyes, being in the examination room in so many dozens of visits? How could I have missed his monstrous acts? Our daughter is now paying for these acts with daily sleeplessness, nightmares, and anxiety attacks. I feel guilty for many things, and I will carry this guilt for the rest of my life. I gut-wrench continuously as I beg for forgiveness for my daughter and for not pushing harder for the truth. She told me that one of the reasons she did not come forward was because she did not want me to feel responsible for what happened. I am so sorry, my princess. I feel guilt for not believing Rachel when she first came out. I asked for her forgiveness. I feel guilty for not paying closer attention to Nassar's treatments. Shame on me. And I now feel guilty that I was not in the courtroom during the Ingham County hearings to hear the victim impact statements in person. Their statements are what gave our daughter the courage and strength to finally come forward. For that, I thank them, and I will forever be grateful to them. I wish I could thank them all in person and give them each a gold medal for their perseverance, courage, determination, and true grit. And Rachel, you are truly the 5-star general of the Army of Sister Survivors. You are my hero. And all the soldiers in your army are my heroes, including my daughter. God bless you all. When bad things occur, I often ask God why God could let them happen. But I have come to realize that everything that happens in life, both good and bad, is a part of life's journey. God did not cause this to happen. This happened because God's willingness to allow man to have free will. However bad this is, this tragedy allows God to send a message to the world of perseverance, strength, and a hope that this should never ever happen again. And God chose the sister survivors as his messengers. To all the survivors, the horrific acts of Larry Nassar changed your lives and the lives of your loved ones forever. But let us not allow these acts to destroy us and to define who we are. We all need to remain strong and support one another during our recovery, victims and parents alike. We need to take God's message and do all we can to help prevent this from ever happening again. Let's also not allow this tragedy to define the sport of gymnastics. Ironically, I believe gymnastics help give our daughter the necessary strength, courage, and character to get through this very difficult time in her life. Your Honor, I realize that Larry Nassar already has been sentenced through other cases to spend the rest of his life in prison. But I ask you to impose the strongest sentence possible in this case as well. I also hope and pray that those who may have seen warning signs, had any knowledge, or could have prevented this repeated tragedy from occurring and getting out of control, also pay for their crimes. That includes MSU, USA Gymnastics, USOC, Twistars, and the Carollis. This all could have been prevented before our daughter and so many other daughters were even born. And 2 years of treatments could have been prevented if we were told that Larry Nassar was under criminal investigation back in 2014. To the organizations that turned a blind eye to all what was happening, shame on you. By ignoring reality, those of you who knew what was going on and did not report or act on the reports all committed a crime as well. Please help us to heal by admitting to your crimes and asking for forgiveness. And please take all the necessary measures to not allow this from ever happening again. Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to make a very short statement to the defendant.
Go ahead.
Larry, I trusted you with my daughter's life, and I loved and respected you. You betrayed my trust, and now you will pay. I hope that you carry all of the victims' and parents' statements with you for the rest of your living days. I wish that you replay them in your head again and again. Larry, I thought I knew you well, and you made me believe that you were a religious person and that you believed in God. If you truly have faith, you know that even the worst of criminals still have a path to heaven on their judgment day, because God loves all human beings equally. However, the prerequisite to pass through his door and into his house is to repent for all your sins that you have committed. You have pleaded guilty to only a few of the many crimes through a plea deal. You still seem to believe that the treatments you performed were medically appropriate. You have not yet truly owned what you did. Your plea deal is not good enough for me, the innocent victims, and according to the scriptures, it is not enough for God. If you truly want to repent for all your sins, then I ask you to acknowledge in your final statements before sentencing, and I will be there for that every victim's statement you have heard is true, and that you indeed committed these crimes. For me, you have nothing to lose and only to gain. You will die in prison regardless. If you do indeed believe in God and the afterlife, please tell the world through this hearing that you are guilty of all the sins that have been stated by all the innocent victims, and ask for your forgiveness. Do it to validate and give a chance to the victims to move on with their lives, and to know that you acknowledge your misdeeds. If you do this, Larry, I will honestly pray to God that he has mercy on your soul. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. There's not much I can say after hearing a statement like that and the pain. I know that you are speaking really on behalf of many parents and loved ones. I would just say this: you are not responsible. The only person responsible is the defendant, who through his criminal acts has hurt and injured physically and emotionally the young women and women that have given the impact statements here in Ingham County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Povolitis, is the next statement, is it going to be anonymous? Or?
Your Honor, I understand the next survivor is a minor, and she does, but he's not. Okay, and she does, whoops, that's wrong. She wishes to be identified, Your Honor. However, because she's a minor, her parents are here. So
I was going to say, then I hope that her parents are here. Please come forward. And it's okay, she has said she's willing to be identified. So.
And could you tell the judge her name, please? Michelle Weisbrod.
How do you spell your last name, Michelle?
W-E-I-S-Z-B-R-O-D.
I'm sorry, W-E-I-S-V-E-R?
Z. Z-V.
Z? Okay. Okay, Michelle. And you are?
Michael Weisbrunn.
And what is your name?
Ashley Westwood.
Ashley? You are Ashley's parents?
Yes.
Okay. And my understanding is that Ashley is a minor, is that correct?
Yes, she is.
So you understand that I need your permission to allow her to speak and be identified, and I understand you're giving that, is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
And Ashley, I believe, is spelled A-S-H-L-E-I-G-H.
Oh, okay. Ashley, whenever you're comfortable and ready, I'm ready to listen to you.
First, I'd like to thank you, Judge Cunningham, for allowing me to speak. I'd also like to thank all of the other survivors who have given me support. Your Honor, may I please address the defendant? I don't know where to start or what to say. I have so many feelings and questions, but they all confuse me. I don't understand how someone who is so admired and trusted could do what you did. I don't know why it took me so long to realize that what you did to me was wrong. When I finally realized that you assaulted me, I felt ashamed and responsible for what you did. It took a while for me to accept that what happened actually happened, and it was forced onto me against my will. It took even longer for me to realize that I shouldn't feel ashamed because I didn't do anything wrong. When I first met you, you seemed so nice. You gave me an Olympic pin and told me how funny I was and how much you liked me. Like any young, innocent kid, I was so excited that someone who went to the Olympics and knew Olympians would think that I was fun. You would make time to see me, getting me in after hours at MSU and seeing me at the spur of the moment. Little did I know that all of this was just your way of making me trust you and feel like you really cared so that I wouldn't question what you were doing to me. You even started all my treatments with, let's put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Now that I know what you were doing, I'm so mad and frustrated. Why would you do these things? I gave you my trust and you stole my innocence. How dare you? I was only 10 when you first assaulted me. At that age, the only thing I should have been worrying about was my full turn-on beam and whether I would stick it at my next meet. As I was going through pictures for a recent school project, I came across a picture that rendered me speechless. This particular picture was of me and a friend, a fellow survivor, waiting to be seen by you at Twistars. Like the watch that stopped right when the Titanic sunk, or the picture of Japan right before the bomb hit. This picture was of two happy girls right before they were to be molested by you. I wish I could go back in time and tell those two girls that what you were going to do to them was wrong, and that they should run. You say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Well, the flames in hell are burning hotter with the fury of those you have assaulted, and those flames are waiting for you. Your Honor, I would like to request that you give the defendant the maximum sentence. He has caused me anxiety, depression, panic attacks, stomach aches, and loss of sleep. I'm no longer the outgoing, fun-loving, innocent young girl I used to be, and I blame him. I now stand before you as a freshman varsity diver, and I know with support I will heal and become stronger. Thank you.
Ashley, thank you so much for your bravery of being here today. I'm so sorry that you had to be here. I appreciate you sharing with me the impact. Thank you. And thank you for bringing her here today.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the next survivor you will hear from is Gabriella Ralph, and she has agreed to be publicly identified, and I have displayed photographs she sent us of her at the age of the abuse. And I believe her dad is a retired law enforcement official.
Gabriella, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to start off by saying thank you, Your Honor, for allowing me to speak. And I'd like to thank the brave survivors whose voices empowered me and helped me find my own. As a child, my passion was gymnastics, although it felt like more than that to me. It felt as though it was a piece of my soul, as if I were born to be a gymnast. Throughout the years, I had experienced the normal aches, pains and sprains, but when I turned 12, I started to feel a pain in my leg that got increasingly worse and eventually spread to my hip as well. I didn't tell anybody because as a gymnast, I felt that I could just tough it out and it would eventually go away. But it started to show in my performance, and my coach suggested I see Larry Nassar. We gave him a call, and I was so grateful that a doctor of his pedigree would see me. He diagnosed me with bursitis in my hip at my first appointment. At the next appointment that my dad and I attended, the x-ray revealed that I had torn my hamstring almost completely off the bone on my right leg, and Dr. Nassar, as he was known back then, added that I'd have to take 6 months off to let it heal and only do conditioning at practice, barring anything that would affect the healing process. I started to cry because I didn't want to be out for such a significant amount of time. That's when he told us that he would do a treatment on me that he had pioneered in order to ease my pain. It started with him putting pressure up and down my IT band using his forearm. It was painful but not problematic. It wasn't until he had me lay on my stomach and said he would be putting pressure on the area where the hamstring meets the bone that I got a knot in my stomach and knew something was wrong, but my naivety blurred my instincts. For about a half hour, Larry had inserted his fingers inside of me. While doing that, what felt like his thumb slowly crept back further and rested on another area down there. This was not what he said he would be doing, and it was a shocking and nauseatingly scary experience as an innocent 12-year-old. It felt so foreign that I didn't understand what was happening to me, so I kept it a secret for 10 years. That was the day Larry Nassar stole my innocence away from me. He stole my ability to trust others, but worst of all, he stole my ability to trust myself and to trust my own intuition. I convinced myself that it didn't happen, and even saw him again when I was 18, during my first year at MSU. I was under the impression that nothing inappropriate could happen because he was looking at the arthritis and spinal stenosis in my neck. Not to mention, he didn't have time for an appointment at his office, so he squeezed me in during an ice skating event at Suburban Ice in East Lansing. During this visit, he didn't sexually assault me like he did 7 years before, but he did stick his hand under my bra and touch my chest while adjusting a rib. I've had this done hundreds of times before in physical therapy, and every time it was performed above my clothes. I instantly had a flashback to my prior experience. Over the years, I tried my hardest to put it all in a box and lock it in there forever. It became a flashbulb memory, and I can remember every single thought I had while laying on that table. I get the same disquieting knot in my stomach anytime the memory escapes from that box. I soon developed depression and generalized anxiety disorder and lost my passion for everything. I quit gymnastics the year after that first experience due to injuries in my back that went untreated because of my mistrust of doctors. I now have a stress fracture that will never heal because I was about 3 years old by the time a doctor discovered it. I started seeing a therapist and psychiatrist when I was 13 due to my dwindling mental health. I was put on an antidepressant, but nothing seemed to be working, and eventually I gave up after trying numerous antidepressants and several different therapists. I had reached a state of anhedonia, and by my 14th birthday, I was addicted to strong opioids. I battled addiction to opioids for the next 7 years. I eventually became addicted to heroin. At 19 years old, I overdosed, and it ironically saved my life. I detoxed and went to treatment for 2 weeks, and went on to live in transitional housing, attend 1 to 2 meetings every day, and see a counselor and psychiatrist. It broke my heart that I had to take time off from school, because I love it so much. But school doesn't matter if you're dead. That was my next stop. I learned how to live without drugs, something I hadn't done since I was 13. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most rewarding. I'm so grateful for my amazing family and support system within AA. Without them, I wouldn't be standing here today facing you, Larry. I even went back to MSU and continued seeing my therapist and joined the recovery community in East Lansing, for which I am also eternally grateful, especially for my sponsor, Renee. But I once again found myself taking a medical withdrawal because my mental health was spiraling out of control because of the stress I felt from studying in hopes of becoming a doctor while confronting the fact that a doctor did this to me. And I had to unlock that box and accept it. It almost broke me, but I stand here today with over 2 years sober and setting myself up to go back this coming summer semester. It will cost me financially because I have now taken a forbearance and 1 deferment, but my life is worth more than that. I now realize that you can't break me, Larry, because you're the one who's been broken all along. I will continue to see the same therapist and attend AA meetings. I'll take things one day at a time. I will be a survivor. I am so disappointed in my school and all of the other institutions that were complicit in this abuse. I pray that you make the right decisions. I want to feel pride in my school again because I'm ashamed of it right now. How could you let so many little girls be sexually assaulted and ignore every single one of them? Money should never be more important than our lives, but it feels like that was your priority for so many years. I do need to take the time to thank Heidi Purdy, the Director of Undergraduate Studies for the College of Natural Science. She has been the only person to offer me guidance and resources after finding out. Because of the withdrawal, I had informed the University Physician's Office in my letter to petition for the withdrawal a year prior. She even took the time to send me an email this week offering support, for which I am extremely grateful. I hope that MSU follows her lead and shows the same amount of empathy in the coming days and weeks. Larry, you have caused me a tremendous amount of pain, and I thought I could never forgive you for what you did to me. Today, for myself, I forgive you. I know you don't care, and I only say it aloud today to close this chapter of my life. I vow to myself that in this moment I am washing away all the pain that has plagued me these past 10 years, and I am leaving it here in this courtroom. I'll pray for you, Larry, and I hope that you see our faces every day you wake up. Sorry.
Okay. You're doing just fine.
And every night before you go to bed, just like we did yours, you have a long time to think about the unprecedented amount of girls you caused to, or the unprecedented amount of pain you caused to hundreds of little girls. To all the little girls out there, I'd like to remind you to trust your instincts because they're right. And if you are ever wronged or violated, do not let shame keep you from screaming your truth as loud as you can to anybody that will listen. Do not let anyone silence you, and hold your head high when you walk, because your strength and your beauty will always shine bright enough to counteract the darkness that people like Larry Nassar bring to this world. Today, the little girl inside of me will begin to heal, and I hope that soon I will begin to shine as bright as I am meant to. Thank you.
Gabriella, thank you so much for being here today. I want to congratulate you on 2 years sober.
Thank you.
That is really wonderful, and I appreciate you sharing with me. Your impact is strong, and
thank you.
You are doing really well, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the next survivor to speak is a minor. She did speak in Ingham County, and she and her mother have requested the opportunity to speak again here, and they are part of the plea agreement. So before I identify her again, I think we might just want to confirm with her mother again as well.
Well, yeah,
so
I think we'll do that. She's already being publicly identified, though, correct?
She already has been publicly identified in Ingham.
Okay.
Oh, no, right? Okay. Oh, see, I can't believe I forgot that.
That's all right. Okay. Please come forward. And ma'am, what is your name? The mom?
Megan, M-E-G-A-N, and the last name's really long, Thieman -P-O-L-I-Q.
I'm sorry, Thieman hyphen.
P-O-L-I-Q-U-I-N.
Demon Poliquin?
Close.
Close, okay. So you are the mother, and what's your daughter's name?
Erin.
Erin. Now I understand that she previously had wanted to remain anonymous, but today you are comfortable giving your permission for her to be identified and make a statement?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and bringing her. Erin? Good morning.
Good morning. Here I have displayed a photograph of Erin on the screen at the age of the abuse as well.
Erin, whenever you're ready, okay?
Your Honor, thank you for letting me speak today. I spoke anonymously 2 weeks ago in Ingham County. After making that statement, I felt like a weight had been lifted and realized how much effort I have put into keeping this a secret for so long. A couple days after I spoke, I realized the defendant still had some hold over me. He was still making me scared of what people would think of me, even after all of this came out. I was still being controlled. I was still afraid. So I'm here today to publicly make my statement as a victim of the infamous Larry Nassar. I am 15 years old. I haven't graduated high school. I've barely thought about college, except the fact that I'm definitely not going to MSU. I don't even have a driver's license, and yet, after this, I'll be able to say I have spoken in a courtroom on more than one occasion. This will be the 4th victim impact statement I have submitted to the court. Once again, I am 15. I started seeing the defendant when I was 13. USAG had fired him, and there was still an open file being processed by the MSU police. After my first appointment, I remember telling my mom that was the best doctor's appointment ever. I was so proud that he would see a nobody like me. I saw him until the end, through August of 2016. Side note, I never saw him wash his hands, not even once, not before or after treating me. Ew. I originally started seeing the defendant for a lower back injury, which was followed by multiple hip injuries. Your Honor, I'm going to skim through the details of how this miserable creature abused me and how it changed my life. I'm not going into too much detail, as it has already been said by so many others. This began when I was 13. I was a typical foolish little girl. I trusted no one would hurt me. I believed in the good of humankind. I didn't have any reason to think otherwise. I walked into the MSU Sports Medicine Clinic in pain. I was extremely anxious to meet the world-renowned doctor that was on the other side of those awkwardly heavy doors. Little did I know that I was about to meet one of the worst people in the world. Now we'll skip to how this miscreation changed my entire life. I have self-harmed. I've debated suicide. I have scars on my arm that will never match the enormity of this internal scarring this abuse has caused. These are very different types of wounds, but both of these scars will stay with me for the rest of my life. They will stay with me until the day I die. I have extreme anxiety. I have to work my life around everyone else. I can't be in certain classes because there's an overwhelming amount of boys. I am scared of some of my teachers, even though I know they're nice and want to help me. It's hard for people who thankfully aren't in the same situation to understand. Sometimes they think I'm faking. Sometimes they think I'm just trying to be difficult. I'm not. This is something that has made my everyday life much more difficult than it was before. This has taken over my childhood. I know all the common sayings, you'll come out on the other side, etc. But for me, there is no other side that's in sight. Day in and day out, I am walking into darkness, not knowing what's there. It's hard. It's unbelievably hard. Your Honor, may I address the defendant? No. You are a pathetic shell of a human being. I am disgusted with you. I am disgusted with myself, knowing that I ever trustingly walked into your office. You talked to me about my coaches. You seemed like you genuinely cared. Knowing that my mom is a nurse, was less than 5 feet away, you talked to her. You talked to her while you were hunched over my body, abusing me. The saddest part of this disaster you created is that I feel bad for you. I can't help but wonder how you'll be treated in prison, whether you will be assaulted in prison. And knowing how much physical and emotional pain that causes, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, not even you. However, I believe, at least a little bit, in karma. What goes around comes around. You had your fun for at least 20 years. You are now being surrounded by your true peers, who in turn will most likely violate you, as you did to a countless number of innocent children. I can honestly say I wish you luck. The rest of your life will be miserable. But then again, you chose this. You chose to abuse hundreds of women, to abuse thousands of times. You did this to yourself. Now, and hopefully forever, I am done talking to you. Your Honor, thank you for being willing to sit through all of this mess and let everyone speak. I can't express how thankful we all are for your kindness. And lastly, thank you to all my sister survivors. Without you, I would feel alone. Without you, I don't know if I would have had the courage to report this, let alone speak today. Thank you.
Aaron, I don't think that anybody who's 15 years of age should have on their resume that they've made 4 impact statements and been in 2 courtrooms. It's heartbreaking. It really is. And I know, as you said, you've heard a lot of cliches from adults who'll come out of the darkness and other things. I'm not going to say that to you. I just know that someday you will be glad that you did make the statements and that you found your voice in the courtrooms, and I'm glad that you were here. And Megan, thank you so much for bringing her here and giving her permission to do this today, because it was her decision that she wanted to be identified. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Ms. Provolone. Oh, hang on, I have the infamous sticky note, right? Okay. So I think this is the perfect natural break to take our lunch, as we said we would. We are going to break from approximately 12 to 1 o'clock. And so I think, well, we are going to be dealing with the contempt issue, and I'll be dealing with that in about 10 minutes. Lauren?
All rise.